We need to know there are enemies of our hearts that are not physical. And if we leave these enemies of the heart untreated, they also take a toll on my life and on your life. And over time, if we're not checking in on the conditions of our heart, these enemies of the heart will slowly erode our heart's sensitivity. And over time, if we leave them untreated, these enemies of the heart have the potential to drive us into very self-destructive and relationship-wrecking patterns or behaviors. One writer actually described it this way. He said, the heart seeps into every conversation, dictates every relationship. Our very lives emanate from the heart. He goes on and he said, we live, we parent, we lead, we relate, we romance, we confront, we react, we respond, we instruct, we manage, we problem solve, and we love, all from the heart. And he concluded by saying, every arena of life intersects with what's going on in our hearts. Everything passes through the heart on its way to wherever it happens to be going. In other words, he's saying as your heart goes, so your life goes. Anger is caused by a debt that cannot be repaid. The question is, what are we supposed to do about it? How are we supposed to be responding to that? I mean, can we do anything about our anger? Well, one day, Jesus tackled the issue head on. One time after having been pulled aside by one of his followers, a man named Peter. And if you have a Bible handy, then you might want to pull it out or pull out your phone and open it up to Matthew chapter 18, verse 23. And Jesus tells a story to answer the question of what we should do when anger and a debt we have in our lives, when it cannot be repaid. Matthew chapter 18. I'm going to begin reading in verse 23 of Matthew chapter 18. Jesus tells a story. He says, therefore, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who decided to bring his accounts up to date with servants who had borrowed money from him. In the process, one of his debtors was brought in who owed him millions of dollars. So the king says, I'm going to make up all my accounts. You owe me money, millions of dollars. This servant couldn't repay it, so his master ordered that he be sold, along with his wife, his children, and everything he owned to pay the debt. But the man fell down before his master and begged him, please be patient with me, and I'll pay it all back. And then the master was filled with pity for him, and he released him and forgave him his debt. Now, what's helpful about this story, it's called a parable, is Jesus is talking about this emotionally charged topic of anger, but he talks about it in a way that all of us can understand. Jesus takes the mystery out of anger, and simply put, Jesus says the remedy for anger, he says it's forgiveness. And forgiveness is this decision that I'm going to cancel a debt. You don't owe me anymore. Now,
that I found that have helped me overcome my jealousies. And I'm hoping that one of those things can help you out. First thing, you need to own it, okay? You need to admit that you got a problem in this area with someone or something. And I know guys especially are like, we're not jealous. Like, yeah, we do. Guys suffer from jealousy too. We have to come to the point where you recognize it is jealousy you're struggling with. If you can do that, the second thing you need to do is to realize this isn't between you and anyone else but God. This isn't about someone else. It's not about what that person has. Are you ready to recognize that your frustration is with God, not the people in your life? You need to come to a point where you can say it out loud. I know it sounds weird. God, I'm upset at you. This isn't what I wanted. But see, that'll help you understand that your frustration is with God, not people. Third thing, talk to God. Remember, talking to God isn't some kind of speech you formulate, thou mayest, doth mine, and thine. You don't have to do all of that. Talking to God is getting honest with the person that made you. That's all it is. If you're bitter, be bitter. If you're mad, be mad. If you're confused, say, God, I need to know what's going on here. Come to God with honest questions. Why am I still single? Why does everyone else know what they want to do with their life? I'm totally clueless. Why does everyone else have cool parents? Why can't we have kids? See, the key is to really ask the questions. Sometimes the questions we have are so hurtful that they've turned into bitter statements. They're not really questions at all. They become complaints. They become something to bludgeon God with. How come I have to? Why do I? Listen, turn them back into questions. There might be an answer that you never thought of. Perhaps there's a reason you're single. Perhaps you were meant to adopt. Perhaps you were the one who's supposed to reach your parents and help them see where they need to change. See, talking to God about disappointment is hard because it often takes a long time to find his plan. But listen, The scriptures are filled with people who wrestled with God with their bitter questions. Abraham and Sarah, they waited 25 years to have their own child. Jacob spent 14 years waiting to marry the woman he loved. This is a process that hurts the most. Waiting for an answer to why am I still single feels like you're waiting for a stone to speak, but make it the thing that drives you back to God. Just remember, 5 years of a bitter question that keeps you tethered to God is better than 5 minutes of living immersed in toxic jealousy. And this all means that you finally have to trust the scriptwriter. Either he's good or he isn't. At some point, abandoning jealousy is the decision to let go of your version of your life and be open to God's plan. A settled assurance that God's in control and that everything will be all right because it's God's plan. It's not yours.
And some of us have traded away the most important relationships in our lives in pursuit of more. Come on, you know this. You've seen this. Some of us have used people in order to advance ourselves. Some of us have ignored our children to pursue a bonus. Some of us have spent more time with our cars than we have with our spouses. And listen, man, I'm not trying to hate on you right now. I really am not. I'm trying to bring to light why Jesus said to guard against greed and to resist this enemy of the heart, because Jesus knew, he knew the consequences of allowing greed to have free reign in our lives. And then Jesus does something in this passage here. It's like he quiets the crowd and he has them lean in a moment and says, listen, I want to tell you a story that will illustrate the consequences of leaving greed unchecked in our lives. This is what it says. It says, then he told them a story. He said, a rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. And he said to himself, what should I do? What should I do? I don't have room for all my crops. And Jesus tells a story about a man who's come to his own conclusion about why he has the things that he has. Remember that question? Why do I have the things that he has? This man's come to his conclusion, and we know how he would answer that question because of the words he uses all throughout those two sentences we just read. Think about all the times he said, I, my, mine, which is kind of ironic to a degree because it's a farm. It's crops, which means there are things that are completely outside of his control that have contributed to his banner year, his fields being fertile, the weather that he doesn't control, and yet he refuses to acknowledge any of this. And here's why this is important. Because Jesus is saying that this man wasn't greedy because he had a lot. He's saying that this man was greedy because he believed all he had was all for him. And if you want a definition of greed, there it is. Greed is the belief that all I have is all for me.
And guilt is the realization that we've messed up. Guilt is knowing we've done something wrong. Now, this is where things start to get a little messy. Doing something wrong is wrong. That's a no-dust statement that I think we can all agree on. Doing something wrong is wrong. But experiencing guilt is not wrong in my mind. In fact, I see that experience is actually a gift. And I hope that we walk out of today believing that guilt is a gift. Why is this? Because I know I will make mistakes to the day that I die. And I'm guessing you will too. And I want to know when I've done something wrong. I want to know when I've crossed the line. I want to know when I've screwed up. I want to know when there's something that's not right, that it's going to cause a bigger problem if I leave it unchecked. And guilt is a gift because it allows us the chance to correct something before it becomes something bigger, something worse.